The Discovery, the Atacama. Deep Space Observatory sat quietly in the Chilean desert, its massive radio dishes pointed toward the stars. Dr. Sarah Chen had been monitoring the night shift for 3 years, and she knew the rhythm of space better than most people knew their own heartbeat. The gentle hum of computers and the soft beeping of monitoring equipment were her lullabies. But tonight was different. At exactly 3:47 a.m. local time, every screen in the observatory lit up with readings that made no sense. Sarah dropped her coffee mug as she stared at the data streaming across her monitors. The ceramic shattered on the floor, but she barely noticed. "This can't be right," she whispered, her fingers flying across the keyboard. She ran the diagnostics, twice, then 3 times. Each time the results were the same. Something massive was moving through space beyond Pluto's orbit, and it wasn't natural. Sarah reached for her secure phone and dialed a number she had memorized but hoped never to use. The phone rang twice before a crisp voice answered. "Global Defense Network, this is Colonel Martinez. This is Dr. Sarah Chen at Atacama Observatory. I need to speak with General Rivera immediately. We have a Code 7 situation." There was a pause. Code 7 meant only one thing: potential extraterrestrial contact. Within minutes, Sarah was connected to General Marcus Rivera, the head of Earth's newly formed defense coalition. "Dr. Chen, what exactly are you seeing?" Rivera's voice was calm but alert. At 55, he had led military operations on every continent, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. "General, I'm detecting multiple objects moving at approximately 15% the speed of light. They're in formation, sir. Perfect military formation, and they're heading directly toward our solar system." Rivera felt his blood turn cold. "How many objects?" "I count at least 200 ships, possibly more." "General, these aren't meteors or space debris. These are artificial constructs, and they're bigger than anything we've ever built." Within 6 hours, the Atacama Observatory was surrounded by military vehicles. Scientists and military personnel from a dozen nations descended upon the small facility in the desert. Dr. James Park, the world's leading expert on cosmic radiation, arrived from Seoul. Commander Elena Volkov, Russia's top space operations specialist, flew in from Moscow. The small observatory had become the most important place on Earth. Sarah stood before a room filled with the world's most powerful people, pointing at a massive screen showing her data. Based on their current speed and trajectory, they'll reach Earth in approximately 18 days. President Maria Santos of Brazil, serving as the current head of the United Nations Security Council, leaned forward. "Have we attempted communication?" "Yes, Madam President," replied Commander Volkov. "We've sent signals on every frequency we know. Radio, laser, quantum entanglement transmissions. No response for the first 12 hours. General Rivera stepped forward. "And then," Sarah's face grew pale. "Then we received this." She pressed a button and the room filled with a sound unlike anything the assembled leaders had ever heard. It was clearly artificial, a series of tones and harmonics that seemed to vibrate through their bones. But somehow, impossibly, they could understand it. "People of the Third World from your star. We are the Zephyrian Empire. Your planet has resources we require. Your species will serve our needs. Resistance will result in elimination. Prepare for integration into our domain." The message repeated 3 times, then stopped. The room erupted in urgent conversations in a dozen languages. General Rivera raised his hand and silence fell. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are no longer alone in the universe, and our new neighbors aren't friendly." Dr. Park, who had been quietly studying data on his tablet, suddenly looked up. "General, I may have found something important. The transmission isn't just a message, it's carrying other information. Biological data, atmospheric preferences, and most importantly, energy signatures from their ships." "What kind of energy signatures?" Rivera asked. "Their technology seems to be based on manipulating specific radiation frequencies. But here's the interesting part. They're avoiding certain bands of the electromagnetic spectrum entirely, frequencies that our sun produces naturally." Sarah felt a spark of excitement despite the dire situation. "You think they have a weakness?" "Possibly. Their home star system would have different radiation characteristics than ours. They may have evolved around a star that doesn't produce the full spectrum our sun does. If that's true, certain frequencies might be harmful to them or their technology. Commander Volkov studied the stellar charts. If we could find a way to amplify those frequencies and direct them at their fleet, we could disable their ships without having to match their advanced weaponry, Rivera finished. Dr. Park, how quickly can you confirm this theory? Give me 72 hours and access to every space telescope on Earth. While Dr. Park worked to understand the alien weakness, the rest of the world mobilized in ways never seen before. Captain Alex Thompson, Earth's most experienced combat pilot, found himself leading a crash program to retrofit every available spacecraft with weapons systems. Old enemies became allies overnight as Russian rockets carried American satellites. Chinese factories produced European designs, and the entire planet worked with singular purpose. It's remarkable, President Santos told Rivera as they watched launches from Cape Canaveral. Humanity has never been this united. It took the threat of extinction to do it, Rivera replied. But yes, it's something to see. On the third day, after Dr. Park's analysis began, he called an emergency meeting. His eyes were bright with excitement and exhaustion. I've confirmed it, he announced to the assembled leaders. The Zephyrians are extremely vulnerable to Class M solar radiation. Their ships showed clear avoidance patterns when our outer system probes emitted test signals on those frequencies. More importantly, I think I know how to weaponize this weakness. He activated a holographic display showing the solar system. We can't fight them ship to ship, but we don't need to. If we position a network of radiation amplifiers throughout the outer solar system, we can create a trap. When their fleet moves through the Mars orbital zone, we hit them with concentrated bursts of the exact frequencies that disrupt their systems. General Rivera studied the display. How many amplifiers would we need? At least 500 satellites, plus ground-based installations on Mars and backup systems positioned throughout the asteroid belt. It's ambitious but possible. Commander Volkov nodded slowly. The satellites could look like standard communication or observation platforms. They wouldn't know what we're really building until it's too late. Exactly, Dr. Park confirmed. By the time they realize it's a trap, they'll be surrounded by amplifiers on all sides. We can create a radiation field so intense that their ship's systems should shut down completely. Captain Thompson, who had been quiet during the technical discussion, finally spoke up. And once their ships are disabled? Rivera smiled grimly. Then we show them what happens when you threaten humanity. The next 2 weeks became the most intense period of cooperation in human history. Every space agency, every military force, and every scientific institution worked together. Factories ran 24 hours a day producing components. Rockets launched every few hours carrying equipment to space. The International Space Station became a construction hub, with crews working in shifts to assemble the radiation amplifiers. Dr. Chen coordinated the entire network from her position at Atacama Observatory, now expanded into a global command center. Amplifier network is at 80% completion, she reported to Rivera. Mars installations are online. Asteroid belt positions are being filled. And the aliens? Rivera asked. They've passed Jupiter's orbit. Still maintaining formation. Still heading directly for Earth. No deviation in course or speed. They act like they own the solar system already. Commander Volkov, monitoring from the lunar base that had been hastily constructed, added her report. Lunar backup systems are operational. We have overlapping coverage throughout the target zone. When they reach Mars orbit, we'll be ready. On the space station, Captain Thompson made final checks on the human fleet that had been assembled. It wasn't much compared to the alien armada, a few dozen ships hastily armed with nuclear weapons and conventional missiles. But it would be enough for what they had planned. Remember, he told his pilots over the communication system, we don't engage until their systems are down. Our job is to finish what the radiation trap starts. General Rivera stood in the command center, watching as the alien fleet approached the invisible boundary of their trap. Around him, representatives from every nation on Earth monitored their stations. For the first time in human history, the entire species was working toward a single goal: Alien fleet has entered the outer detection zone, Dr. Chen announced. All systems show green. Amplifier network is fully operational and standing by. Rivera looked around the room at the faces of humanity's defenders. Scientists and soldiers, young and old, from every corner of the Earth. In a few hours we'll find out if human ingenuity can overcome superior technology. President Santos placed a hand on his shoulder. General, regardless of what happens, humanity has already won something important today. We've proven we can stand together when it matters most. On the screens around them, the Zephyrian fleet continued its approach toward Mars, unaware that they were flying directly into the most sophisticated trap in human history. The next few hours would determine the fate of Earth and possibly change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. The greatest test of human civilization was about to begin. The Trap Springs Admiral Kethtar stood on the bridge of the Zephyrian flagship Void Render, watching the primitive solar system grow larger on his viewing screens. In his 3 centuries of conquest, he had subjugated 47 worlds, and this backwater planet would be no different. The third world from the star showed signs of a young civilization, radio signals, primitive orbital structures, and the chaotic energy signatures of a species that had barely learned to leave their own atmosphere. Status report, Kethtar commanded, his forearms gesturing toward his tactical officer. Admiral, the primitive inhabitants have launched numerous small objects since we entered their system. Analysis suggests simple observation satellites and communication relays. Nothing that poses a threat to our shields or weapons. Kethtar's mandibles clicked in amusement. They're probably trying to get a better look at their new masters. Any attempts at communication? Several, Admiral. Primitive radio and laser transmissions. We responded with the standard integration message. Since then, their signals have become more frantic but remain ineffective. As expected. How long until we reach the third planet? At current speed, 14 time units. We will pass the fourth planet's orbital zone in 2 time units. Kethtar nodded. The red planet looked barren and useless, but some of the satellites orbiting in that region might be worth examining after the conquest. Perhaps the inhabitants had attempted to establish colonies there. It would make no difference to the outcome. Meanwhile, in the command center at Atacama Observatory, tension filled the air like electricity before a storm. Dr. Sarah Chen monitored the approaching fleet while dozens of technicians tracked every aspect of their radiation amplifier network. Alien fleet is now 2 hours from the activation zone, she announced to General Rivera. All amplifiers show green status. Mars installations are powered and ready. Asteroid belt positions are locked on target. Rivera studied the tactical display. The Zephyrian fleet was maintaining perfect formation, with their largest ships at the center and smaller escort vessels arranged in protective patterns around them. They're confident, he observed. No scouts ahead, no protective sweeps. They think we're helpless. Commander Volkov's voice came through from the lunar command post. Human fleet is in position. Captain Thompson has our ships spread throughout the asteroid belt, hidden behind large rocks. They'll move in once the trap is sprung. Dr. Park looked up from his calculations. General, I've been analyzing their approach vector. If they maintain current course and speed, they'll be in the center of our radiation field for approximately 12 minutes. That should be more than enough time to disable their systems and allow our fleet to move in. And if it doesn't work? President Santos asked quietly. Rivera met her gaze steadily. Then humanity goes down fighting. But I believe it will work. Dr. Park's analysis has been confirmed by every expert we have. These aliens evolved around a different star. Our sun's radiation will be like poison to their technology. Captain Thompson's voice crackled over the communication system from his position in the asteroid belt. Command, this is Eagle Leader. I have visual contact with the alien fleet. They're bigger than I expected. The largest ships must be 10 kilometers long. Acknowledged, Eagle Leader. Remember, you do not engage until their systems are compromised. We need them disabled before you move in. Understood, Command. My pilots are ready. Admiral Kethtar watched with growing interest as his fleet approached. The area where many of the human satellites were clustered The tactical display showed dozens of the primitive devices scattered throughout the region around the fourth planet's orbit. Curious, he mused. They've positioned many of their observation devices in this region. Perhaps they hope to record our passage for their historical archives. His science officer examined the readings more closely. Admiral, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures from several of the satellites. They appear to be more sophisticated than initial scans suggested. How sophisticated? Kethtar asked, though he wasn't particularly concerned. No species this primitive could pose a threat to Zephyrian shielding technology. They seem to be designed for energy collection and amplification. Perhaps they harvest energy from their star for power generation. Kethtar dismissed the information with a wave. Primitive solar power collection, nothing more. Continue approach. But as the fleet moved deeper into the satellite network, something began to feel wrong. The science officer's mandibles were clicking nervously as he studied his instruments. Admiral, I'm detecting synchronized activation among the satellites. They're all beginning to emit energy on very specific frequencies. What frequencies? Kethtar demanded. Before the science officer could answer, every screen on the bridge erupted in warning signals. The ship's systems began fluctuating as waves of intense radiation washed over the fleet. In the command center on Earth, Dr. Chen's voice rang out with excitement. All amplifiers are active. Radiation field is at maximum intensity. Alien fleet is showing massive system fluctuations. Rivera watched the tactical display as the red dots representing the Zephyrian ships began to flicker and move erratically. It's working. Their formation is breaking up. Dr. Park was practically bouncing with excitement as he monitored the readings. The radiation is overloading their systems exactly as predicted. Their shields are failing, weapons are powering down, and their navigation seems to be completely disrupted. On the flagship Void Render, Admiral Kethtar struggled to maintain his footing as the ship shuddered under the assault of radiation that his species had never encountered. Emergency lights flashed throughout the bridge as system after system failed. Damage report, he shouted over the alarms. Admiral, our shields are at 15% and falling. Weapon systems are offline. Navigation is completely disrupted. The energy frequencies are unlike anything in our databases. How is this possible? This is a primitive species. His tactical officer's voice was filled with panic. Admiral, this was planned. They knew our vulnerabilities. This is a trap. For the first time in his 3 centuries of conquest, Admiral Kethtar felt fear. His mighty fleet, which had conquered dozens of worlds, was being systematically disabled by a species he had dismissed as primitive. Captain Thompson's voice came over the communication system with barely contained excitement. Command, this is Eagle Leader. Alien ships are dead in space. Repeat, alien ships are disabled and defenseless. Requesting permission to engage. General Rivera looked around the command center at the faces of humanity's defenders. Every screen showed the same thing. The most powerful alien fleet in the galaxy floating helplessly in space, their systems overwhelmed by the radiation that Earth's sun produced naturally every day. Eagle Leader, you are authorized to engage. Show them what happens when someone threatens humanity. Throughout the asteroid belt, human ships emerged from behind rocks and debris, like hunters moving in for the kill. They were tiny compared to the massive alien vessels, but size meant nothing when your enemy couldn't fight back. Thompson led the charge, his ship's nuclear weapons locked onto the alien flagship. All units, this is Eagle Leader. Target the largest ships first, make every shot count. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted less than an hour. Human missiles and energy weapons tore through the disabled alien ships, which could offer no resistance. Some Zephyrian vessels tried to retreat, but their navigation systems were so disrupted they could only drift helplessly. Admiral Kethtar, watching his fleet being destroyed around him, managed to send one final transmission before his ship's communication system failed completely. To any Zephyrian forces receiving this message, do not come to this system. The inhabitants are not primitive. They are more dangerous than any species we have encountered. They turned our own weaknesses against us. They are the transmission cut off as Captain Thompson's missile found its target. In the command center on Earth, Cheers erupted as the last alien ship was destroyed. Dr. Chen hugged Dr. Park while Commander Volkov shouted in celebration from the lunar base. General Rivera allowed himself a small smile as he watched the tactical display show nothing but debris where the mighty Zephyrian fleet had been. President Santos spoke into the communication system, her voice carrying to every human involved in the operation. To all the brave men and women who made this victory possible, you have not just saved Earth. You have announced to the galaxy that humanity is not to be underestimated. Captain Thompson's voice came through, tired but triumphant. Command, this is Eagle Leader. Mission accomplished. Alien fleet has been completely destroyed. No survivors detected. Rivera nodded with satisfaction. Well done, Eagle Leader. Well done, everyone. As the dust settled and rescue operations began for any human ships that had taken damage, the implications of what had just happened began to sink in. Humanity had faced its first extraterrestrial threat, and not just survived. They had won, decisively. Dr. Park was already analyzing the debris from the alien ships. General, from what I can tell, these aliens were extremely advanced in some areas but completely unprepared for the specific conditions of our solar system. They never encountered a star like ours or species that evolved under its radiation, which means there might be others out there with the same weakness, Rivera realized. Commander Volkov's transmission from the lunar base carried a new sense of purpose. General, I recommend we begin immediate expansion of our deep space monitoring network. If the Zephyrians found us, others will too, but now we know how to fight them. Rivera looked out at the star-filled sky, no longer seeing it as an empty void, but as a vast frontier filled with both threats and opportunities. Agreed, Commander. From now on, humanity looks outward. We'll be ready for whoever comes next. Dr. Chen, still processing the magnitude of what they had accomplished, spoke softly. Do you think they'll come back? Other alien species, I mean. Rivera considered the question carefully. Probably. But when they do, they'll find us ready. Today, humanity proved something important. We don't have to be the most advanced species in the galaxy to be the most dangerous. We think differently, we adapt quickly, and we never give up. As the sun rose over the Atacama Desert, casting light on the observatory that had detected humanity's first alien threat, a new age began. Earth was no longer an isolated world hoping to someday reach the stars. It had become a force in the galaxy, and any species that threatened it would face the same fate as the Zephyrian Empire. The age of human expansion had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. 6 months later, Captain Thompson stood on the bridge of humanity's first interstellar exploration vessel, preparing to leave the solar system. The ship was built using technology recovered from the destroyed Zephyrian fleet, but improved with human innovations. Ready for departure, Captain, his navigation officer reported. Thompson looked back at the blue dot that was Earth, then forward toward the stars. Take us out, navigator. Let's go introduce ourselves to the galaxy properly this time. Behind them, Earth continued its orbit around the sun, its radiation fields now armed with permanent amplifier networks that would make any alien invasion impossible. Humanity had learned that the universe was not empty, and they were ready for whatever came next. The species that had once fought endless wars among themselves had found their true calling, protectors of their world and explorers of the infinite cosmos beyond.